Hello, this is Dr. Clarence R. Pearson Sr., and welcome to My View, a podcast where I offer my professional perspective on today's most pressing geopolitical and socioeconomic issues. Recently, my attention has been drawn to developments concerning the earth moving machine saga in Liberia, especially around the conversation of governance, planning, fiscal burden, and overall management of what we generally call yellow machines. Here is my view on the matter: yellow machines, fraud, or failed political showmanship. Liberia's Yellow Machines project has become one of the clearest tests of whether the Boakai administration intends to govern infrastructure through institutions or through spectacle. What began in May 2024 as a dramatic presentation of 285 earth moving machines at a cabinet retreat was framed publicly as a breakthrough for feeder roads and county access. Minister of State without Portfolio Mamaka Bility said the plan was to distribute 19 machines to each of the 15 counties, and FrontPage Africa reported that officials presented the initiative before any completed procurement process was publicly shown. The first governance problem was the project's original political framing. FrontPage Africa reported in May 2024 that the machines were publicly discussed as coming from a friend, and subsequent reporting tied the proposed package to South African businessman Robert Gumede and the Guma Group. Whether or not every early claim about the underlying deal proved correct, the effect was the same. A major public asset transaction was introduced to Liberians less as a formal state procurement than as a relationship-driven opportunity. In a constitutional democracy, that is a dangerous opening signal. It suggests that personal access may outrun institutional procedure. The second problem was inconsistency. By January 2025, FrontPage Africa reported that the government had effectively backtracked from the early triumphalism, with Information Minister Geraldine Mcpia saying negotiations were still ongoing and that no final agreement had been consummated. The same report noted that the initial public announcement had occurred without legislative approval or a completed procurement process being placed before the public. That shift from celebratory certainty to procedural ambiguity did not calm public concern, it deepened it. The third problem was procurement credibility. In April 2025, the Liberian investigator reported that the Public Procurement and Concessions Commission said it had zero involvement in the deal, even though the first consignment was already said to be at sea. If accurate, that was not a minor technical lapse. It struck at the legal and ethical core of public contracting. When a multi-million-dollar acquisition is advanced outside the normal procurement chain, public suspicion becomes rational, not cynical. That is why the central question should be framed carefully. The public record, as currently available, supports a strong case for poor governance, weak planning, and politically motivated showmanship. It does not by itself conclusively establish prosecutable fraud. Fraud would require proof of intentional deception, unlawful personal benefit, or criminal diversion of state resources. What the public evidence clearly shows so far is something different, though still serious. The administration appeared eager to advertise the project before it had secured the procedural credibility needed to defend it. The result was not a clean policy rollout, but a credibility crisis of the government's own making. The later realignment of the project confirms that the early phase was not well structured. By late 2025, FrontPage Africa reported that the government had moved away from the earlier arrangement and toward a new $22 million deal financed through EcoBank, with the National Road Fund and the Ministry of Public Works involved in raising the money. The same reporting said the Chinese side would supply the machinery, training, after-sales servicing, and spare parts. In January 2026, FrontPage Africa further reported that the government had decided to return 35 machines tied to the earlier controversial arrangement. That sequence does not read like the steady implementation of a mature plan. It reads like a politically attractive project being rebuilt after its original architecture lost public legitimacy. The arrival of the first major batch in February 2026 gave the administration a visible public relations victory. The first 137 machines docked at the Freeport of Monrovia, and the House of Representatives declared February 26, 2026, National Yellow Machines Day. President Boakai then created the Yellow Machines Board of Authority and a special presidential project coordinating committee led by Brownie J. Samukai to oversee deployment, cost management, operations, storage, and maintenance. These actions may have restored momentum, but they did not erase the original questions. If anything, they highlighted how much institutional reconstruction had to be done after the rollout had already gone public. The governance lesson is therefore straightforward. Even a potentially useful development project can lose legitimacy when process is subordinated to optics. Liberia does need road equipment. It does need rural access. It does need a stronger state capacity for road maintenance. But development in a modern democracy cannot rest on trust us later politics. Procurement rules, financing terms, ownership structure, maintenance responsibility, and legislative visibility must come before the parade, not after it. The economic side of the story is just as important. Liberia's approved FY 2026 national budget is about US $1,249 billion, dollars, and the Ministry of Finance has publicly acknowledged that the 2026 budget includes the government's financing obligations for the yellow machines. That means the machines are not simply a capital asset. They are a recurring fiscal commitment inside a budget already under pressure from debt service and competing social demands. This matters because the road fund was not designed to become a blank operational reservoir for a politically branded fleet. The National Road Fund states that its monies are devoted to periodic and routine road maintenance, with rehabilitation and improvement works capped at 40% of annual revenue and only through servicing long term loans for strategic roads. In other words, the law already assumes trade offs. If debt service and machine operations consume a larger share of the fund, less money remains for actual maintenance inputs across the country. The administration says the new arrangement includes spare parts, training, and after sales support. That is positive and materially better than importing equipment without a support package. But that still does not answer the deeper sustainability question. A national fleet of 285 machines requires fuel, operators, mechanics, storage, security, dispatch systems, and disciplined preventive maintenance. The Executive Mansion's own February 2026 statement assigning the new board responsibility for efficient cost management, operations, storage, and maintenance is an acknowledgement that purchase is only the beginning of the fiscal burden. Public critics have recently argued that the project's first year setup and operating demands may far exceed what should have been expected from a supposedly ready to roll initiative. I was not able to verify from a primary budget document or official board filing the specific public claim that more than $50 million has been requested for year one setup, operations, and maintenance. That exact figure should therefore be treated cautiously unless the government publishes the supporting documents. But the argument behind the criticism is still important. If year one operating needs approach or exceed the purchase price, that would strongly suggest that life cycle planning was not adequately presented to the public before the acquisition was sold politically. This is why the better policy question is no longer whether yellow machines are useful. They plainly can be. The real question is whether Liberia chose the right ownership and management model. Public ownership offers visibility and political credit, but it also transfers fuel risk, maintenance risk, staffing risk, and depreciation risk directly onto the Treasury. A more service-based model, where government pays private contractors for verifiable road outputs while enforcing strong procurement and performance oversight, would shift more of that operational risk away from the state. The Boakai administration chose the more visible path. It now must prove that visibility will not become fiscal drag. So was this yellow machines fraud or politically motivated failed showmanship? Based on the public evidence now available, the stronger case is for failed showmanship with serious governance defects, not yet proven criminal fraud. The administration seems to have chased a quick developmental symbol, introduced it through a politically appealing but procedurally weak narrative, then spent months repairing the legal, financial, and procurement architecture after public trust had already been damaged. That is not a small mistake. In a country with Liberia's governance history, procedural weakness is not cosmetic. It is the beginning of public distrust. The project can still be rescued from becoming a cautionary tale, but only through radical transparency. The government should publish the full contract, financing structure, repayment schedule, vendor obligations, spare parts inventory, county deployment plan, and annual operations and maintenance budget. It should also clarify the exact relationship between the Yellow Machines Board, the Ministry of Public Works, and the National Road Fund. Without those disclosures, the machines will continue to symbolize not just infrastructure ambition, but the old Liberian problem of politics outrunning planning. In the end, the issue is bigger than machinery. It is about the culture of public administration. Liberia does not need development theater. It needs development that can survive scrutiny. In regards to fraud, it is highly recommended that the LACC conduct an impartial investigation at the earliest possible time when records of accounts are available, if any. My View is a continuing series where I share informed commentary on a wide range of geopolitical and socioeconomic topics. If you found today's discussion helpful, please follow, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I invite you to explore other My View episodes available online. Until we meet again, goodbye.